Hey 10th graders! So this is our last week together, sadly, and I have to give you a test for the works that we've gone through since the last test we did, which was Don Quixote and Valleys of Testing. So we're going to take a test on Tuesday. Possibly I'm going to check with you guys to see if you'd rather just take it at home on Monday. I'd rather that you guys take it at home on Monday so that on Tuesday we can read another story. But anyhow, this is the review, and the stories that will be covered for your open note test for units 13, 14, and 16 are 7 stories, and I'll go through them with you. So right now, make sure in your notes that you have this information so you can take the test and do well. So the first story is Ishmael and Captain Ahab, and that's by Herman Melville. Make sure that you know that it's an excerpt, it's a part of a longer work called Moby Dick, and that was about the white whale. And so remember all the characters. There was the Native American guy, there was Starbuck, and also the ship's name was the Pequod. So know all of that. And remember what I told you guys about the different characters, Ishmael versus Captain Ahab. Kind of just know about, like, how are they different, how are they similar, like what was described about them, their personalities, just kind of know those characters. Then also we did Adam and Eve in Paradise, and that was by John Milton. And that poem is part of a larger work called Paradise Lost. And it's all about, Satan's fall from heaven when he rebelled, and then how he turned into the serpent and tempted Eve, and everything that happened after that. But in the story that we read, remember, it was about Eve waking up, and the first thing that she saw was her own reflection, and she fell in love with her own reflection. And then there was a voice that told her to go over to Adam, and she wasn't as impressed looking at Adam, and she was trying to go back, but then God was telling her, no, this is the one that, you were created out of. So just remember that story so that you can do the test. And then we also did King Thrushbeard, and that was by the Grimm brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. And it was about the prideful princess, the beautiful princess who rejected all the suitors. And she even called King Thrushbeard that name. That's not really his name. It was Thrushbeard is a type of bird, and she was making fun of him, and they conspired with the dad to teach her a lesson in humility. And she had to go and marry the beggar that came by, and she went home with him and found out that she was pretty useless and couldn't do any of her jobs. And then at the end, she goes back to work for her dad's castle, and then King Thrushbeard reveals that he was the beggar all along, and she learns her lesson. And then we also did The Entrance to Hell. That was by Dante, and Dante is actually the main character in that story. He actually wrote himself into the story, and he wrote his favorite author, a poet named Virgil, to be his guide. And he was the one who led him through the entrance to hell and to hell. And they reached the river in there. I think it's the River Styx. And the ferryman refuses at first to take him because he's alive. But then later on, Virgil tells him, no, it was on God's orders. You have to let us through. And then also for the test, know what some of the punishments were, what kinds of people were in each circle of hell. I mentioned a couple of them, and a couple of them are in the book because we talked about who was in the entrance, and we talked about where Virgil and the other philosophers were. So know those. We did the Wooden Horse by Virgil, and remember that was about the Trojan War. So remember, the Greeks, or the Achaeans, came and invaded Troy because they were upset about the prince taking the queen. And that story is part of a larger story called the Aeneid. And it's about Aeneas. Aeneas was the sole survivor of the Trojan massacre, and he later on went on to found Greece, right? Let's see, we also did the story of Daedalus and Icarus, and Pyramus and Thisbe, and those were both by Ovid. And those stories are part of a larger work called the Metamorphosis. And the Daedalus and Icarus story is the father and son were trapped on the island of Crete, King Minos' island, and they were trying to escape. So Daedalus, he's an inventor. He creates wings like a bird, and he tells Icarus, don't fly too high, don't fly too low, fly straight in the middle, and don't go off on your own, follow me. But Icarus got too excited about flying and ended up getting too close to the sun. The sun melts his feather, the wax on his feathers, and he falls to his death. And that's why the Icarian Sea is named the Icarian Sea, because that's where he dies. The story of Pyramus and Thisbe is a love story. They were teenagers. Their parents didn't want them to be together. They shared a wall, and there was a crack in it, and through that crack they were able to talk to one another. They come up with this plan to run away, and Thisbe goes first. She encounters a lioness. She drops her veil, and the lioness kind of chews on it for a bit, getting some blood on it, and Thisbe runs away. Pyramus comes later, sees the bloody veil, thinks she's dead, kills himself. Thisbe comes back later, sees Pyramus, figures out what happens, and then she kills herself with the same sword. And this is the story that Shakespeare got his story from. Okay, so just know all of the information. Oh, I forgot to mention the poem by Dante, The Entrance to Hell, is one part of a bigger story. The bigger story is called the Divine Comedy, and it actually is made up of 3 parts. Inferno is about hell, Purgatorio is about purgatory, and Paradiso is about heaven. And then let's see. Also remember in the Wooden Horse who Laocoon was, what was important with him, what happened to him and his family. Let's see. I'm looking at the test right now. I can tell you what else I can tell you to make sure you know. Make sure you know what Ishmael and Captain Ahab, what the sailors were looking for when they went out to sea. What were they searching for? Also know why the wooden horse was allowed to go through the city gates of Troy. What made them decide to do that? Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. So make sure that's all in your notes. You can only use your notes, and you cannot ask anybody for help. I'm gonna trust you guys to be honorable. If we do end up doing it at home on Monday, I'm gonna Skype you guys and find out what you think. But this is a basic review for that test. And if anybody else has extra credit that they're gonna turn in, like Nia and Ashley did, this week is your last week to do it. And if you do it, then you don't have to take this test. So let me know right away if you're gonna still turn that in this week. Okay, so I also assigned another story. It's called What Men Live By, and it's by Leo Tolstoy. That story is due by Thursday. You don't have to take notes. We'll just be ready to discuss it. And then if we have time on Tuesday, we're gonna discuss the fables of Aesop. It's like little moral tales. Okay? All right. Love you guys.